Hello, welcome to FPLIQ. I'm Rob, FPL Hall. I'm joined once again by Ryan, Football Chatbox, Planner, AUTN, Teacher FPL Lucian, and my daughter who's stuck on my lap like a koala today. Today, before we do the introductions, let's just have a chat on what the agenda is today. When is the right time to take hits? So possible hits are coming up with players being out injured. Yes, she's upset about it because we've had Bowen out injured. Callum might be coming in on for a hit for a lot of people. It is me. And we want to talk about when is the right time to actually take a hit. We'll also look at our player pick reviews, player picks for the next 4 game weeks, matchups between Nottingham Forest and Everton, looking at Forest for potential Christmas sale shopping. Can they give us some budget value for Nottingham Forest, as well as a little look at Everton before we look at the specific matchup. Then we look at Liverpool against Fulham. Again, it's a busy Christmas time, but they rotate in Europe more than in the league. So is there some more potential than just Salah coming from Liverpool? I think actually looking at our 4 game week player picks coming up, that's a resounding yes from what's going to be coming along. And then we're going to be looking at captaincy because we're again faced with a genuinely difficult choice between the 2 FPL juggernauts. So how are we feeling this week? We'll start with Ryan because I've had to mix the boxes around. Now Lucian's back and he's now my left-hand man over here. Ryan, how's your week going, buddy?
Not too bad. I had a good FPL week as well. So maybe the taking a break in week 1 to focus on week 2 has so far started off well. So we'll see if this continues. But yes, doing good.
And Tien, how are you doing? You're fresh back from Taekwondo? Taking your frustrations out?
No, always good after an hour of kicking people. It's feeling good. FPL wise, it wasn't a super good week. I think I had like a tiny red arrow. Just the hit for Solanke didn't work out, but I mean, it is what it is. The team is looking good. Can't complain too much.
Yeah, we'll talk about hits coming soon. As my feeling on hits is people just look at it for a 1 game week thing, but we'll talk about that after we welcome back from his red flag Lucian. He was red flagged for party time last week because it's break time, I believe, where you are now for teachers. So first up, did you have a good time?
Well,
A good night out?
yeah. We actually went out for board games, pretty much. And yes, I have board game ideas for us to play, during our downtime later on. So yes, I have learned a lot, and I now know that Wolves and my FPL team cannot both have a good week at the same time. So
No,
yeah.
it's another week where it just feels like Wolves just get hammered every week. You always see those jokes like Liverpool, right? Because they get like things in their favor, and teams like Newcastle getting it against them against PSG, which was ridiculous. But it just feels like literally every other game for Wolves is some kind of ridiculous call, and honesty was not rewarded. Was it Vinicius headbutting Kilman? And if he'd have gone down, rolling his face, doing all of that, it'd have been a red card without a doubt. But they say don't dive, but if you stay on your feet, they say it doesn't count. So how can you blame people?
VAR is just basically meant to catch those particular moments, when the player doesn't go down. VAR is just meant to penalize the people who actually committed the fouls. I think it's more of how multiple penalties were given away using VAR. I mean, I think it's demonstrated its power when it disallowed the hat trick of offside goals that Son conceded. So, I mean, that's okay. I think if we are going to live by a consistent rule, the offside one was a very good example. But this handball thing really needs to get revised. Either the rules change or you just don't use VAR at all for handballs.
It was revised, and it said if it comes off your body and touches your hand, it's not a penalty. And UEFA have different rules.
Different implementations at different competitions. At this point, I don't know what the handball rule is anymore.
No one does.
Yeah,
no one does.
Yeah, don't try to figure it out.
Yeah.
No, that'll be an entire stream itself of just us contradicting every single call that gets made. But that's the way it is. So we're going to kick off then with when is the right time to take hits? Just as a caveat, of course, it's team dependent, and we do say, play your own way, things like that. But we're just going to talk about like our own experiences as to why we take hits, and if people ask us a question for some help as to when we would advise to take a hit. This has probably been my least hit-filled season in my entire 13 years of FPL. For the first 9 years, I just took hits every single week because I just messed around with it. But when to start taking hits, the obvious one for me is if there's a long-term layoff, like an injury or suspension or something like that, with no suitable cover. So you can always maybe postpone if you've got a decent bench for the next game week. So an example is the game week just gone by. I knew Bowen was a little bit iffy. We didn't hear anything before the press conference. He was touch and go, but he didn't play. But I had Pedro as my first sub, someone I brought in, someone who I think when he starts has potential, and he's extremely cheap as my sort of second or third striker. Of course, it's really come up trumps that he got on at something like 27 minutes, and he's gone ahead and got 2 goals. But my point is, he was a good replacement. If you sat there with Kabore, Baldock, and someone else, you might start to think otherwise. But I believe in Pedro if he starts. So it wasn't worth for me going ahead and taking a hit for someone, like I said in last week's video about taking a hit for Solanke. I said, what's the point? I've got Pedro. If he plays that, I think he can do something. So I would say it's more about when to not take a hit. So if you've got decent cover, then that's a good chance. Also, emotional hits. So people get frustrated with cash. Rashford keeps blanking. Sterling's had another shocker or whatever. Just remember why you have those players in the first place, why you put them in the team, and don't just look at the fixture that's gone by. Look at the fixtures that are coming up. So you look at Sterling. I know he's just done really well against Newcastle because he scored, but if you had held on for him a long time, they're about to go into a good run of fixtures, and remember why you brought him in the first place. So try not to just take those sort of Sunday night, Monday morning emotional moves. And I think that's even for transfers, not just for hits. So what I said earlier as well about what is a hit, what does the -4 actually mean? For me, a -4, a hit should be taken when it's a mid to long term move. Sort of, again, we always sort of look in 4 game week chunks. I would say look at it like that. So I'm weighing up the idea of bringing in Keller in for a -4, which sounds stupid in the 1 game week a 1 game week transfer. But if Keller is out for a guaranteed 5 matches, because I'll put it on the screen now. This is a graphic was sent, I think TM put it in our chat, but it's Lego Mane, who's very popular on Twitter. He makes incredible graphs. And we've talked about it before. This whole stream is about the Christmas crunch period, right? If Alisson's out for 3 weeks, he's going to miss 5 games. Or 4 weeks, he's going to miss 5 games, right? So I wouldn't count that as a -4 for this game week. If it means that I'm bringing Keller for a -4 and he plays 4 matches, I'll just divvy up those points with -1, -1, -1, -1, and then also compare him to who I'm transferring him out or playing him over. So Turner's a dead spot anyway. Take him out, put Keller in. It's basically Keller and a -4 against Areola over 4 game weeks. And if you can comfortably say, I think Keller will get 3 out of 4 clean sheets, Areola will get 0 out of 4 clean sheets, then you've got the answer who's going to be the most successful move. So if it's a mid to long term move, don't just think of it as don't let the -4 put you off. Just spread out the -4 and put that in your calculations when you're making that transfer of player A -4 versus player B, who outscores over the mid to long term run as to when you were going to make the move anyway. Other 2 examples, if you really see a big advantage, or just for fun. You're miserable with your team. It's a real mess. You know exactly what players you want to bring in, and you just want to say, I'm going to take a -12 or -16 just because I want to ship them all out, bring the players I really like in, and have a bit of fun. So yeah, that's the way that I'm looking at why I take hits or when I take hits, or when I don't is the key one for that. Ryan, how are you feeling? What's your take on the time to take hits?
So the cliche word will be it's squad dependent. But I usually see, I guess, hits generally would fly would be a couple of weeks before double game week, maybe on a double game week, because there is all the upside there. Maybe blank game weeks if you need to try and fill out 11 players. I personally roughly take, last season I took about minus 60, I think, somewhere. So that's about 15 hits for the season. I've seen managers take 100-point hit in a season and still do well. So it's all completely dependent on who you're actually getting rid of and if you're bringing in players that are really good. So there's nothing that says that taking a hit is bad. Taking a hit can help your squad if you're bringing the correct player in. That's the main part. The other thing, like you mentioned, right? Look at it. You can look at it as a short term or a medium term. Now, Kelleher could be a short term move where you go. If you have Areola, and I also got Areola, I'm like, I do not see Areola keeping a clean sheet. Maybe the Crystal Palace, maybe there's a chance because they're all injured. But like the other games, I don't see him keeping a clean sheet at all in any of those games. Then you go, can Kelleher probably outscore Areola over those specific games? If it's yes, then you could probably bring him in for a hit. Or you could do the alternative of being like, maybe I won't take a hit this week because I don't see too much of a difference because he'll have to get 4 points plus. Let's say Aguilar happens to keep a clean sheet or gets 3 points. So Kelleher needs to get at least more than 7 for it to justify it this week. You could go, maybe I do it for a free transfer next week. That's a possibility in terms of how you can manage your transfers. But if you've got like Bowen, now I have cash. I had cash. I've sold cash. And the main reason I've done that is because I was like, I'm not going to start him this week, which is probably the better weeks for him, and I'm not going to use him again after that. And no point me waiting till game week 18, so I sold him because money is tight and I need to kind of be careful with regards to price falls and whatnot. But I still have Bowen. Now, if Bowen is out, I'll take a hit. I'm okay with that. If Bowen is out, that is if he's out for like a couple game weeks. If he's out just for this week, I don't mind. I can bring one of my bench players on to play this week, which is what I guess Rob did last week with Joao Pedro on the bench. So it all depends on your squad and who you have. And if it sounds right to you, if it seems right, where you can get a better player than the player you currently have, I don't mind taking a hit. But that's only if there's good upside. And upside has to be +4 over what you expect the player to get.
Right. So Rob is missing for me.
Yeah, go ahead, Lucian.
I probably feel that it has to do with it's all about the -4, isn't it? So while Rob is away, I'm just gonna chip in with because I really am. Okay, wait. I'm in this WhatsApp group full of other crazy FPL fanatics, right? And I think, a number of years when people are free, we have an awards show at the end of it, which is something we can do too. But long story short, every year, every year, literally every year, I get this award called the Kamikaze Pilot because whether I finish 20k or 200k or 2 million, I always take more than, well, on average, a hit a week. I average about 200 points in hits. And yes, so you want to talk experience right here. Okay. And over the years, based on big enough sample size, I've classified, well, I think people really only care about the successful transfers. So we're gonna get the obvious scenarios out of the way because Rob's covered them very well. The ones that are always 50-50 always come from sideways transfers, right? Anything that involves selling a player that is already playing 90 minutes with potential for scoring is always going to be dangerous because usually people make that sort of sideways transfers based on fixture swings, for example. So, I've given myself a warning, right? I'm going to sell Julian Alvarez, and that's a calculated risk because of upcoming fixtures as well as Bernardo Silva's presence in the team. And yeah, as long as you can sell players to bring in other assets, especially if they are assets that everyone else has and you're trying to make up ground, I do feel that um you have to follow the template at the right time. And if it means taking hits just to follow the template when the template is strong, just do it. Um But yes, sideways transfers. Someone like owning Martinelli instead of Saka, huge red flag. But the other one that is trickier and harder to predict, arguably, would be the Bowen situation. Short-term injuries. If you know a player is injured, how long will they be injured for? A number of weeks back, Saka was a yellow flag for most of the international break, so I went with Martinelli, and the swing is huge over the course of 4 weeks. So the question you've got to ask yourself is, can you predict injuries, or will you be extremely hard on yourself if you buy a player and he's like, injured, and then you sell him? At this point, we're all reliant on Ben Dinnery or whatever we can to assess the extents of injuries, right? Like, I think Gabe from Net Hall even managed to speak from experience when we say we need to look at the color of the fluid in Bowen's knee to assess on whether it's a short-term or a long-term injury. So all these matter because we see how injuries happen on the pitch. We see um we have more medical information and more cross referencing that we can make based on and we don't have to rely on a manager's word nowadays to assess how long a player is out for. Like even hamstring injuries, right? We already know somewhat the difference between a grade 1, grade 2, and a grade 3 tear, and yeah, we can make assessments based on that. So short-term injuries, unfortunately, need a policy on when to buy them back. Because Bukayo Saka, if you sell him due to the short-term injury, sure, that's a fair assessment. But he came back literally the same week, and he's had what, 3 assists in the last 4 games. So yeah, you have to be ready. When is it too early to get him back? When is it the right time to get him back? When he shrugged off his niggle or his knock or whatever it is. And when is it too late? And you have to start sourcing for other differentials. That is something I feel everyone has a different opinion on. But as for myself, whenever you sell a player, you always need to make a plan, especially if you're selling an asset, when you're going to get him back. Simple as that. So if I sell Alvarez this week, I need to have a plan on when to get him back. And for myself, I know my trigger is Watkins to Alvarez if I have to pull the trigger by chance. Simple as that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the ways in which we maybe differ, because if I sell a player, I don't consider bringing them back. Unless it's like Salah going to AFCON. If I sell a player, they're dead to me. But it's not like as extreme as that. But like, you know what I mean? Like if I'm selling a player, there's a reason. There's always a reason. And if it is a short-term injury, then yeah, there is probably a plan to bring them back. But this is why it comes back to the point when I said about a bench. It's so cheap in FPL this year. There's no reason why you can't have just a half decent sort of first sub to hold off on that. Bowen one is a bit. They're the frustrating ones, right? Because he could have played in the last game, and now he could play in this one, and it's just when you're just going to bite the bullet and say, "Nah, I'm getting rid. Like I'm not playing around with it." But again, save it for the next game week, right? If you've already used your transfer and you've got an half decent sub, then I wouldn't be taking a hit for it. I don't think, unless it's someone long term. Because I think Bowen has got maybe 2 or 3 weeks left in a lot of people's sides. Like I'd be happy to sell Bowen this week because I think now it starts getting difficult because he's got Palace. And I rate Palace's defense quite highly. So Tien, you are the last point maker on this. How are you feeling about hits?
Yeah, so for me, it's always come back to the fundamental, and I think I've mentioned it several times on this stream on the channel. It's all about needs versus wants, and it depends on on your play style as well. So think about hit is like using your credit cards. So you don't have money, you need to buy like essential groceries, for example. So then you use your credit card to buy food for the short term, because without that you will go hungry. Now in this case, it's very likely that you will get good value out of it. Without food you can't survive. So you survive, you be healthy, you can work, and you can have a good chance to pay back that credit card debt. One move is when you use your credit card to buy a lottery ticket in the hope that you win something big. Obviously, you could lose everything and you can't even pay back your credit card debt. So what does it mean in terms of FPL? So an example of a needs some of you have mentioned is, when you have to remove a liability, right, of an injured player, a long-term injury, or player whose minutes are now no longer secure, or later on, when you got a blank player or player going to AFCON or whatever for a few weeks, and you don't have a decent bench cover, then when you take a hit to get a good player to replace that player, then um, you have a good chance to get the points back and to pay back that hit instantly. I think a good example was when Chilwell was injured, I think around game week 5 or 6, and a lot of people, took a hit to get Trippier, for example, because Trippier was about to hit a very good fixture run, and that move worked out beautifully because it was based on a genuine need move. Example of a one move is when you remove a fit and decent player just because they haven't been returning for a few game weeks, or they run into a difficult fixture, um, or alternatively you just remove someone who has a very short-term injury, and even though you do have a bench cover, but then you just want to buy another decent player to chase that upside, for example. So these circumstances, I think you would always want instant return to repay that hit, because a lot of the time those kind of move can backfire straight away. And a lot of the time, in my experience, obviously sometimes it works wonderfully, but a lot of the time it doesn't, and sometimes it can backfire big time as well. I think I've got a few recent examples of people in the community who sold like Gordon for Eze in the last game week, for example, or I think someone even sold like a Doku a couple of game weeks ago, or for a hit, and get like a minus 3-point swing or something. Like a hit for upside chasing can backfire big time. So I think this is where play style come into place as well. Like, for someone like me who is quite conservative, I generally avoid those one moves as much as possible and focus on the need moves. So therefore, naturally, I'm quite hit averse. I think last seasons I only took like minus 12 or minus 16 in total or something. But on the other hand, a more aggressive manager like Lucian, for example, will probably take a lot of those one moves, to upside chasing moves, and will take a lot more hits. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, or right or wrong way to play. Just do whatever you feel comfortable with, whatever that make it fun for you, and such a play style. Just try to be consistent with it. I do get Rob's point earlier about try to look at the medium term and split the hit over a number of game weeks, which is fine. Like makes perfect sense. But personally, I always like my hit to be paid back instantly. If I don't think it's likely to pay back instantly, I would think twice about it. I'd always ask myself, can I make that move next game week for free? Can it wait? Now, of course, there are other factors as well, like if you're being priced out of that move, if you wait, or like this is the only week where if you wait, you miss out on that very very good fixture, for example. And sometimes moving early as well for that for the hit allow you to move ahead with your next planned transfer the following game week as well. So these are some of the sort of more intangible benefits of taking a hit when you may not get the gain straight away, but your team is better set up, and hence potentially you'll get more points over the sort of the medium terms, as you said, mainly thanks to moving that transfer forward. So for me, last week I took the my first hit for the season to get Solanke in for Archer. Now that was not necessary at all. I didn't have to take that hit because my first free transfer, the free transfer was just to remove Mitoma for Mbumo, which was for free. So the Archer to Solanke was not necessary at all. It was slightly upside chasing, but more importantly, I look more into the future where I think that I will benefit from having a solid third forward than Archer to cover me in some game weeks, and especially in the blank game week 18 as well. So I didn't mind that, the fact that it didn't pay off straight away. And I think, taking the hit with sort of the more medium-term outlook is particularly useful for this period. This sort of the fixture crunch where we've got a lot of fixtures in a short time frame. Rotations will be plentiful, so you can be a bit more aggressive and get that hits paid back straight away. Especially for example, Bowen, who potentially missing out on the weekend, but then because of the short time between game weeks, he could potentially miss like 3 or 4 game weeks. In that sense, taking a hit to remove him makes more sense. And the other time when hits can be quite beneficial is during the period where you got blank and double game weeks, where you have much better chance for the hits to be paid off. So I think in summary, to decide between a need move that is worth a hit, I normally just look at my team first and identify and prioritize the problems based on the urgency for my team. Then I identify the alternative to replace those problematic players, rather than looking the other way around, where it's like, oh, I really want player X or players Y, and I'm trying to find my way to get them in. And if it's a single transfer that I can do, I generally just do that. But if not, then I'll try to do a double move where, with a hit, where I can remove like 2 problems at the same time. That will be ideal. Or alternatively, 1 need move and 1 upside chasing want move. But the best way to do it, in my opinion, is if you can save a free transfer to have 2 free transfer, then you can take an extra hit on top of that, which means that you can do 3 moves, and that opens up a lot more options, in my opinion. And I think that is why saving a free transfer is very powerful whenever you can. And I personally always treat every free transfer as being worth 4 points, so that I'll force myself to save the transfers, a free transfer, and resist those upside chasing moves as much as possible. I find it suit my play style and tend to have long-term benefits. But of course, I'll just conclude my bit. As we always say on this channel, just play it your own way.
Yeah, I think you're right about it feels a lot of people usually take hits because of like hitting price rises or getting on that juicy fixture a week early. But a point that you made that I never really thought about myself is moving up your transfer plans. That because if you are too conservative and you're just like, oh, I won't bring Palmer in this week, I'll bring him in next week. And then it gets to next week, something else happens. Or you bring Palmer in and you're like, oh, but actually this is the week I was going to also bring in this other guy. I was going to bring in anyone. I don't know, Rashford. I was going to bring in Rashford this week, but now I've got to delay that for another week. But by taking a hit and it's early, you can push all your plans forward or even rearrange some plans. But well, I know you're taking a hit, but you're kind of giving yourself a future free transfer back. Because by doing next week's plan transfer this week, it means next week's planned transfer is free. So you can either roll it for a second free transfer or see what happens next week and think, oh, well, this is the week I can ship out my 4 million defender to a 4.5 million defender, change whatever, right? So that's something I hadn't thought about before. Like by taking a hit, you're kind of freeing up some future moves or at least bringing something forward. Because if you're too conservative, you keep pushing it back. Other things are going to happen. If you say, oh, I won't take a hit this week, for like last week, I won't take a hit for Bowen like I didn't last week. So this week, Bowen pretty much has to be my transfer out if he's ruled out. But then if something else happens, or there's another player that I want to bring in, I'm going to have to delay that till next week. And then I'm on this backward spiral of I'm a week behind where I want my team to be. And that means that I'm a fixture off. So if there's a good 4-game fixture run for a team. It's now a 3-game fixture run. And if I have to wait another week, it's 2 fixtures that are green. When I wanted him originally way back when they had 4 green fixtures. So an example of that, we're bringing Etse in. I know he's got injured, but you brought him in because Crystal Palace had like 3 or 4 good games to have, and then they're pretty much done for a while, right? But if you didn't bring Eze last week and then you couldn't do it this week, you're not going to bring him in next week because then there's only 2 left. So then where'd you go? Your sort of transfer plans all go out. But this Lego Mane graph, if you just search on Twitter, because I know it's a bit small if you like looking on your phone or something, but it's really good. It's very simple. That dark green is more days off, all the way to the color red, which is fewer days off, and you can see the order is like the Premier League table. And you can see, how busy it's going to get from game week 14 to 20, which is the sort of period we're looking at, which is why it's called like the Christmas crunch stream right now, because you got to plan before. There's no point in starting to plan and prepare in the future, because from next week, that's when it's like 3 games a week, right? So you need to be prepared for that. Let's have a look at our 4 game week player pick reviews. So these are players that we picked 4 game weeks ago. And we'll, of course, start in defense with Ryan's favorite player, who he has already transferred out. I'm going to play him. He's against Bournemouth.
I'm not playing him. Yeah, but I'll tell you why I'm not playing him.
So your player was Cash, the Polish Cafu. Tell us what happened with him.
So FPL Sidenet is in the chat. He loves Medicash, but unfortunately, I'm gonna roast Medicash for his absolute disappointment of being an attacking fullback with numbers and not returning. The only clean sheet, or not even clean sheet, 5 points. The only 5 points he got was because he got subbed off early before Villa considered that clean sheet. After that, he had returned 2 ducks in cricket. You would say ducks, and a 2-pointer as well. Probably the biggest disappointment the only thing I got positive from Cash was actually Cash in team value. That's the only positive I got from Medicash. I don't know what, he just continued to rise in price, and I just increased my team value. That's the only thing I got positive from him. I've sold him because I have a defense of Tsimikas, Gabriel and Trippier, and on the bench I've got Lascelles as well. And I'm not starting Medicash over any of the 3 I mentioned because the other 3 have better fixtures. And if Bournemouth is supposed to be the better fixture this week, and then they've got tough fixtures for Villa after that, until you get to game week 18, at which point you never know. It'll be typical peak FPL for Medicash to be on 4 yellow cards until game week 17, get his yellow in game week 17, and be suspended for game week 18. And everyone's been keeping him for game week 18, and he can't play. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna get rid of you. I went, sold him, freed up some funds, bought Forest fullback Toffolo for 4.4 million because I think they have decent fixtures. And at the same time, I'm getting a player who has a pretty decent fixture for game week 18 as well. So that's what I've gone and done. But in terms of Cash as a player pick, I will rate this as a failure because there was so much I expected, and I was disappointed.
I think that's all it is. It's disappointing, but the pick was fine. Like, it started off with a Luton clean sheet. Right, and then Forest away. We've talked about how bad Villa are away from home, which they've finally beaten that curse away against Tottenham Hotspur. But at home to Fulham, they won 3-1. They got 3 goals at home, banging them in at home like they always do. And then he got hooked at half time.
He should have had it. Yeah, he should have had an assist in all of this because Watkins just couldn't finish. I'll give him his props there. But even then, it's been disappointing.
I'm probably just going to bench him for those 2 games. Or
yeah, fair enough.
Is it City Arsenal at home? Because even though it's at home, because like you said yourself, like, yeah, he could get suspended again, but I've got Tsimikas and double Newcastle defense. I'm just going to play him. And then I might switch Kabore to Branthwaite or something like that. But it comes back in, like I say, game week 17. Brentford, all right, not the easiest. Sheffield United, Burnley, Everton, Newcastle, Sheffield again, like United. Like, I don't know. I don't
So
think it was a bad pick. I don't know. 10.
Probably not, but like disappointed.
10, do you think it's a bad pick?
I think it comes down to expectation, right? You expected a lot more than what he got. Yes, you can always sit here and make excuses for why he didn't return or whatever, but yeah, at the end of the day, the outcome does have to be part of the conversation, right? Like, we don't just look at the points, but it's just the fact that he came in our teams with a lot of promises, a plum runner fixture, very attacking, playing right back, sometime right wing. Yeah, he just couldn't produce the goods. So I think I'm very disappointed having him in my team.
I'll still believe it. Well, I just don't see the upside in set. Like, who are you going to go to
Yeah.
that's going to make it worth? Like, is he worth a transfer? We talk about how precious transfers are, right? Like, Bowen maybe being out, and I'm either going to go for Palmer or Diaz for Liverpool, right? That's a move where I could feel there could be like a 20-point swing in it, right? There could be a big, especially if Bowen's out. Who's coming in for cash? So unless you take a hit, like, who's coming in that is really going to be like, yeah, that was worth it. A defender transfer this year, this season was worth it.
I agree. So my main reason for taking him out was the potential price fall, because I wanted that 0.5 in savings to make a move elsewhere. In potentially upgrading Areola, who has been absolutely trash, to maybe a better goalkeeper. So that's kind of the reason I mainly did the move, to avoid that, because I wildcarded late, so my team value is way lower than most people. So I needed to make that move. That was the one reason. And also because I wasn't going to play him this week. So if I'm not playing him in probably his best game, there's no point in me benching him while his price continues to fall if he disappoints.
But I'm going to say the same thing. What goalkeeper are you bringing in that's going to make it worth a transfer?
Plenty better than Areola at this point.
No, just stick. It's 4.2 million. Just you've transferred in it, like, using it for a goalkeeper. There's like, even though Areola's rubbish, he's still a top 10 goalkeeper. Look, Becker is the best player, the best goalkeeper in the Premier League, and he's 13 points ahead. That's it. Sanchez has the same points. Vicario, who's been getting plaudits for Spurs, is 6 points ahead. Areola has more points than Ederson. You're making a move from a 4.2 million goalkeeper, where, like, the upside of using that precious transfer, taking hits, for a player who's got more points than Flecken, more points than Jose Sarr, more points than Anderson, more points than Raya, more points than Martinez, more points than Pickford, Kaminsky, Fotheringham. He's got more points than all of them. So why?
Yes, but that's because of the penalty save that he did so long ago. That penalty save is not coming again.
But that was just a 10-point. That was a 10-pointer in game week 2. But the rest is still some 3s and 4s and 6s.
Yeah, but I'm looking at future potential points. And I don't see
Palace,
West Ham
Fulham, Wolves, United in the next 5.
He'll keep 1 potentially, if you're lucky, out of that 5.
Who else is we said this last week. Who's keeping clean sheets in the next 4? Who's getting more than 2 out of 4 clean sheets?
I'll put a good bet on Leno potentially outscoring Areola by at least how much is it? It has to be more than 4 points.
Leno's
right? So
got
about,
Liverpool, Forest, West Ham, and Newcastle.
No. So until like game week 20 odd, I'll put Leno up there over Areola.
No, he's got Arsenal, Newcastle,
I can also
West
go
Ham,
to Sanchez
Liverpool.
if I wanted to. I could go to Sanchez.
Okay,
as well.
Sanchez. Yeah, but
yeah,
the
there
upside,
you go. Okay.
is the upside.
There's more potential clean sheet opportunities from Sanchez than there is from Areola.
And my other point is, you said you weren't going to play him. Why couldn't you just have a good first bench then?
Who?
Cash.
cash.
You'd have had a good first bench.
I had So you mean this week? If I had cash on the bench?
Yeah. Don't sell him. Just put him on your
but
bench.
then like the whole thing was the price fall.
All
That's the
that,
one.
all that for 0.1 million.
It's fine. It'll make a huge difference come later.
All right, that's enough cash chat. I think I'm the midfielder, and I think Tien's the wild card, right? Yeah. I went for Matoma. Let's talk about disappointment. I need to thank Tien for this because I brought Matoma in a week earlier than I would have liked to on my wild card. Because I didn't bring him in anyway. Just bring him in. I was like, that's a really good point, Tien. And I congratulate him at the time for opening my eyes. I wish I'd kept them firmly closed because he's been nothing short. He's got one return since game week 6. Game week 6, when he got 14-pointer, he's got 1, 2, 2, 2, 6, 1, 0. Now, the 0 is injured, so we can't. That's a running theme that we have. At least mine was in the last game of his 4. Usually, we're getting injuries in the first game of our 4-game week picks. Again, it's the same. It just feels like a cash thing. Like he had Fulham at home, Everton away, Sheffield United at home. Granted, he played 45 minutes, and Nottingham Forest, he's injured, so I can't count that. But he's rotated. And he's rested or rotated against Sheffield United. The one fixture, like one of the most beautiful fixtures that you can have, Sheffield United at home, for an attacking side like Brighton, he's not brought until half time. He gets a pretty lucky assist, if I'm honest, away to Everton because it takes massive deflection, and he blanks at home to Fulham. Just him and Brighton are just struggling. Both of them with fitness or injuries. And they've not looked the same since they've been smashed by Villa in game week 7. 6-1. Just a downwards spiral of results, performances. It's been okay, but I just think just have no Brighton until like game week 20 when fixtures turn and players return. I think that's the time to look at Brighton again because they are great value when they're all fit. They're a fantastic team to have in your side. Most of us, or most people, started with like 2 or 3 Brighton at the start of this season because they're such a wonderful side to watch when they're on the ball. But with the amount of players that they've got out right now, they're a team to target. They still don't have a clean sheet. So they're just a team. I wouldn't captain anyone against them, but they're definitely a team where it's like they are a green fixture right now to play. Home or away, I'd play any player against this team. But we could call it a red pick, whatever. I just feel like I do about cash. I think the idea was right. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I can't account for a Stupinian coming back and getting injured within like 10 minutes of making his return. And Dunk getting a stupid red card in the last game. Lampard is injured again. Webster's out injured. March getting that horrible injury as well. That looks quite long term. Dahoud out. Fatty, unknown return date for him as well. He's out injured. And Cisco still out sort of till early next year, I think it is. And Welbeck out injured as well. Also unknown return date. So I don't know what to say. They're in a big mess at the minute, Brighton, but yeah, there you go. Any thoughts on Matoma, guys? Or Brighton?
I think we expected Brighton to rotate. I actually did not expect Mitoma to come on against the games that he didn't start. So the reality is that the moment Brighton started fielding first teamers in the Europa League, we knew that they wouldn't sustain their form in the league. Estupinian was definitely a bigger factor than we all thought. I think if Estupinian did not immediately get injured, Brighton would have told a completely different story. So I do feel that Brighton, in some sense, I don't want to go into my pick just yet, but really, as one of the biggest points here, is that Brighton, despite not defending, we never cared about their defense. It's just the fact that they only scored 6 goals in these particular 4 games that really is the disappointment. And I think in some sense, it's a lesson learned for all of us. When you invest in a team that is half injured, literally half the squad injured, you just don't get the attacking returns.
10 players flagged.
I once again, I think it's a red pick because, yeah, it all comes down to expectation, right? You know, when we pick a player, what do you expect? And yeah, like, yeah, Mitoma, even if he was expected to be rotated, you would have expected him to do much better for the games that he played, especially for that fixture run. So,
Yeah,
so
I
I
don't think
think,
he
obviously
played
I have
bad.
him as exactly. I think that's the thing. Like, I expected him to do much better, not just on the points, but on the field whenever he played. The same with Cash. I think I put him on exactly the same cam as Cash. I have them both, and I'm very disappointed with both of them. So, yeah, for that reason, it wasn't a successful pick.
Going on to the forward, and we're sticking with Brighton because Lucian had Ferguson.
I'm not proud of it. I think, okay, when we pick a Brighton forward, just a Brighton forward, right? We are basically hoping not for a consistent 6 to 7 pointer. We know that they will blank for a lot of games, and the question comes down to whether that one big haul that FPL haul got will justify the 4 games that they blank for. So in these 4 games, I completely expected Ferguson to get that big haul. So for me, it's a yellow. I'd give a self-assessment of a yellow because I was hoping for that same Ferguson 13 pointer against one of these 4 teams, and it just didn't happen because of the injuries for the middle 2 games that really hampered his return. Mm, I think for me, the incentive to own Ferguson was really to fund a really good midfield because I mean, realistically, nobody expected Joao Pedro to start games. So if you fielded Ferguson, it implied that you would have a very strong midfield 4, right? Salah, Saka, and then you'd be like trying to figure out who you want with the remaining 2 slots. If we picked an enabler such as Gordon or Cole Palmer, we'd basically be having Evan Ferguson and Mbomo, or we'd be rotating between the same gang of 6.5 million midfielders such as Diaby, such as are there any other 6.5 millions that we can think of? Mitoma. Um, so
The RB 6
if
6.
yeah, so at that point in time, in game week 10, right, he was thereabouts. So I mean, what would be the combination of Brighton, Villa, Brighton and Villa players you would pick in game week 10 now that we look at it in hindsight, right? Because for myself, I went with the combination of Cash, Watkins, Adingra. So, yeah. And I think the sad thing here is that even within the 6 goals, none of it was concentrated on one player. Joao Pedro had 2, both against Forest, and then Adingra had 1, Ferguson had 2, Mitoma had 1 assist, and it's all so spread out that in the end, it didn't matter which forward you picked. You'd basically get 11 to 15 points out of those 4 games, and 13 to 19 points thereabouts. Didn't matter who you picked in that Brighton side. So for me, it's a yellow only because Ferguson is just not the cheapest forward available that landed in that range. Adingra was. So Adingra would have been a green pick there.
Yeah, I think that's fair. If we had some like show favorites, Ferguson is in there. Like we've all spoken before about how much we think he's great, and if he had the minutes, he would be in a lot of people's sides. Just like we like Wilson. Wilson's a popular, but Nunes as well. These are players that if we were promised minutes and not too many injuries, a lot of us would have him in our sides. And like I said, I could have gone Ferguson, but I went for Pedro because I just thought he was going to get more minutes. But it just so happened that they were using Pedro and Fati more in Europe and using Ferguson more in the league, and that was an issue. Because I'm not going to sit here and say I'm not lucky because Pedro didn't start the match; he was benched again, and I ended up having a small green arrow and a good game week. That's purely because of an injury, and Pedro came on. He even got an extra point because he played over 60 minutes because he came on so early, right? So it just a little bit of luck for this week. So let's look forward with our player picks. I'm wearing a Liverpool shirt today. We're looking at 3 Liverpool players. I couldn't believe this when I saw the notes. Tien, are you raising your hand? Yeah, have a question?
Bowen.
My pick.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Tien,
It's
pick
alright,
Bowen. Right,
man.
move it forward.
Bowen is dead to us, right?
Okay, it's because Lucian's notes are all lovely and highlighted, and I missed yours, but they're there. Sorry, but
No,
Bowen,
that's all right.
what a pick,
That's all
what a
right.
player, another injury.
Well, I'm just gonna be quick. Well, pick him for the fixture run. I expected 2 to 3 returns, got 2 goals before getting injured. For the last game against Burnley, but he played 90 minutes in all the other 3 games, got decent attacking stats, so scored 2 goals in those 2 games against Brentford and Forest. Now, traditionally, he seems to be better away from home. So I think had he played against Burnley, he could have, he might have got a field day. But obviously, injury is unfortunate. So I don't know. I'm happy with the pick, but he could say it's a yellow because he didn't get all the returns. But
You have him as well. Do you have him, Bowen?
I have him. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gutted because when I brought him in, a lot of people going to like Saka, but he's in like the top 5 key stats for all attackers, and I was happy to get him in for like the Forest game for Matoma, and I was eyeing up that Burnley away game, and I thought that would have been the game for him, right, away from home against an imposter of a
I would have
Highline
captained him
Burnley
as well.
Yeah. He was my choice too. When we talked about it a couple of game weeks ago, and I brought him in for Matoma. I think you did the same move, right? Matoma to Bowen.
No, I got Bowen and Mitoma at the same time on my game week. Game week 8 wildcard.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So it's not even like I'm sat here. I want to sell him, but if we're looking at another Amanar, I'm not gonna hold him for another week and go to my bench because it's not as strong this week. Because I played Archer, right? Because he was at home to Bournemouth, and I thought he might do something, and you can't trust Sheffield United, so it seems. Okay, now let's go on to our next pick, where we're talking a lot about Liverpool. Starting with our defender, the only non-Liverpool lad amongst us, and it's Ryan. Ryan, who are you looking for the next 4 game weeks?
So I've gone for Zinchenko. So Arsenal, well, out of Zinchenko, Gabriel, and Saliba, I like Gabriel. A lot of people own him, so I haven't mentioned it because I guess the whole reason of the player pick is also for us to like suggest players to go and pick. I think Saliba has reached a price range where it's now a bit too expensive for a centre back with only 6 pointers. So I've gone for Zinchenko, and I do understand that there is a slight minutes risk with him at times, but because of Arsenal, one being the best defensive team in the league, and also scoring a few number of goals in the league, it helps Zinchenko whenever he plays to get on the bonus points as well. So he tends to rack up 2 to 3 bonus because of that as well. And he also gets into pretty decent shooting positions. So considering all of that, I've gone for him. If he can keep between 2 to 3 cleans, even 3 cleans out of the next 4, won't be surprised.
Yeah, he's had a great last 4 game weeks, apart from the Newcastle game where he didn't start. And he was the person that I mentioned as well before, that if I was going to go into that defense and he plays, I think he's an excellent pick, and good fixtures coming up. I think I'm the next one, with the midfielder, and I'm Luis Diaz. I've already mentioned earlier that he is very potentially my transfer in this week. Jota is out injured, but I'm going to wait for press conferences and news because it just says it's in depth. We don't know how long it is at the minute. And if I just pop back to the Lego Mane graph that shows how busy it is. The good thing about Liverpool, which we'll talk about later as to why we could be looking at more of their assets, which might echo a bit what we're going to say today because we're talking about 3 Liverpool players now. They rotate in Europe and they're focused on the Premier League, whereas most of the other teams are focused on Europe and sort of rotating the Premier League, right? So they're the opposite. They're more focused on the Premier League. And with Jota out injured, they don't really have another winger going into a pretty nice run of fixtures for the Liverpool attack. So I just feel that I had thought about later when we talk about Nunes, who one of us has picked. I don't think there's as much competition for Luis Diaz on that wing, and I think at least sort of 3 out of the next 4 games are games where I would be hoping to the extent of expecting something, because Fulham at home, Sheffield United away, Crystal Palace away, United at home. It's only actually the Crystal Palace game that I'm thinking is the most difficult one there, because United at home, Liverpool are fantastic. So Fulham, there's an opportunity there. Man United at home, I think there's always an opportunity there as well. And then Sheffield United away is plum, right? It's what you want your player to play against. He's got 2 goals for Colombia and a 2-1 win against Brazil in front of his parents, who are also back in England and could be at the games as well. So an emotional time. He's so happy. He's got his parents back who are there cheering him on. I just think it's a perfect mix of FPL and football magic. You know, he's going to go out there in front of Anfield. They're all going to sing. They're going to show his dad on the big screen and his mum, and everyone's going to clap, and he's going to lift up his shirt that says, I don't know, some Spanish, like, mi mama, mi papa. I don't know what amore. I don't know. That's Italian. Whatever Spanish is for love. And I just see it. I can see, at least sort of 3 returns in the next 4, but I can see it being a little lopsided of like maybe like a goal and assist against Fulham, and then like nothing against Palace, and then maybe a goal or an assist against Sheffield and an assist against United, something like that. But yeah, that's my pick going into the next 4 game weeks. Mez mentioned in the chat as well, my only issue is I could be leaning towards Palmer, not Gordon. I'm going to go for Palmer, I think, instead. That would just mean I can go for Pedro to like Watkins or Pedro to any striker I want next game week, but I don't know if I'm that bothered about Watkins now, because he's about to go. I know he's at home, but he's about to play against Arsenal and United. Arsenal and City. So I don't see the point in that move. Like, whereas I just think for those 4 games, if I can have 2 Liverpool attackers, I think that feels pretty spicy. Going up to the forward then, Lucian.
Yeah, no brainer if you've already owned Tsimikas and Mohamed Salah. In my mind, the third best Liverpool option, despite the Luis Diaz emotional return, for me, just screams Darwin Nunes. I think 5 starts in the last 6 games have quelled all X-minute concerns, and I'm just a big proponent of the eye test. So when we look at their next 4 opponents, right? Fulham, Sheffield United, Crystal Palace, and Man United, there are 3 sides that commit huge mistakes in defense. And it's primarily because, they're just not used to the system yet. Calvin Bassey from Fulham, Man United's entire backline, especially since they're trying to reintegrate Luke Shaw. No one's going to argue against me there. As well as Sheffield United trying to bring Anel Ahmedhodzic back into the side. Robs, he still got it. They are all extremely error prone at the back, and who better to take advantage of it than Darwin Nunes? I still assume that Mohamed Salah is going to assume a more creative role, because Fulham, United, both Uniteds in this case, as well as Palace, they do not exhibit a particular weakness down either side. The shots will disagree, but conceptually, in terms of their tactical, their defensive setup, like if you can get around Palinia, you are breaking through Fulham on the flanks. If you can get between the lines of Sheffield United's, you are causing a lot of damage. If you are just playing direct balls into United's defense, you're gonna cause havoc and a lot of panic. So that is prime Darwin Núñez territory. I don't expect him to score that many goals. 2 goals is an extremely high upside already out of 4 games, but I do expect Núñez to win penalties and have a lot more assists than we expect out of the next 4 games. So for me, after Watkin plays Bournemouth, even with 3 games, Sheffield United, Crystal Palace, and Man United is already a decently high floor as the justification to own Darwin Núñez over Ollie Watkins.
Fulham have the joint most amount of errors leading to a goal. Add on to your part there, Lucian. So, yeah, that's exactly right. And wildcard, any pick you can have in the whole game. And he's joined the Liverpool lads. Here he is, TN.
Cuiven. Is it
Who?
Cuiven Kelleher?
No, it's not. It's not.
Okay. Yeah, so I think you just gotta play the fixture, right? So I'm going for Trent. So Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's well, obviously, you know, we've already talked about Liverpool, which really good next 4 fixture, and that includes Manchester United. But you know, Liverpool have been very decent defensively as well. Although obviously, you know, we have to caveat that Alisson has play a big part in that, right? So yeah, I think you've got a chart there. I think the amount of save that he's made and goal sort of conceded prevented is very high with Alisson as well. But nevertheless, I think if you still expecting at least a couple of clean sheets in the next 4. And Trent in the last few game weeks, best or third best for XGI as well amongst defenders, and second or equal second for big chance created in the last 4 matches as well. So I think there's both upside in attack and clean potential. That makes him a really good option. And I think the ownership is pretty low, if I'm not mistaken, just because, you know, he's so expensive. So obviously, you know, for a longer term, I probably wouldn't look at him. But 4 game weeks, if you can get to him, especially for those non-Haaland drafts, right? You know, money is not an issue. I think Trent is a very good upside pick that he can have for the next 4 game weeks. So, my success will be about 2 clean sheets and at least one attacking return.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And yeah, great minds and terrible minds think alike. I think we're sat here thinking. I think way back, I can't remember. I think it was during the international break. Do you remember when we gave our predictions for the top 4? And who'd be top at Christmas? Do you guys remember when we did that?
Yeah,
I
I think I put Liverpool first.
I
yeah.
did. I said Liverpool were going to sneak their way to the top of the table. So I think this sort of echoes that idea that with the fixtures come in and teams being focused a little bit on Europe, that you know, it's still possible. We'll leave Liverpool for a little bit now, and we're going to go on to, because we like to look at places where people don't usually tend to look, or content doesn't usually drive towards. I don't think a lot of people will be spending their time talking about Nottingham Forest and Everton this week, but we are, because that's what we do. The first question, so we'll talk about matchups and predictions and why we think certain things are going to happen in the game, but we have like a talking about question for each fixture and why we chose it anyway. So I titled this one Christmas Sale Shopping, a viable assets available at Nottingham Forest. Are we overlooking him a little bit? Is there a little bit of value we can have there? Forest are, I think, second on the fixture ticker, but over this busy Christmas period, so that is game week 14 to game week 20. They don't have European games to worry about. They do have players who, you know, tend to be pretty nailed as well. A little bit of a look at Everton if we want. We know their fixtures are a little bit hit and miss, but we've talked about the value in their defence before, because you could get any defender and goalkeeper for Everton for 4.4 million or less. So before we look at the matchup, just in terms of The Nottingham Forest attack, I'd say that there is value to be had there if you don't go for Palmer at Chelsea or Gordon at Newcastle, or you need 2 budget midfielders. Let's say you do want Trent and you do want Watkins and Haaland up front, and you need to have 2 cheaper midfielders or one that you need to rotate. I think Alanga for 5 million, Gibbs White for 5.7, or a third cheap striker in terms of Wood for 4.9 million. They're the 3 that I'd be looking for as good choices, in my opinion. Less rotation, probably likely at Nottingham Forest. So we're looking for Premier League security during this period with less rotation and players on the pitch for more minutes. And I feel like this is one of the more secure sides. And over this Christmas period, they're going to have Everton, Fulham, Wolves, Spurs, and Bournemouth over the next 5 game weeks. Now, I know Spurs is obviously a difficult game, but that's all the games they're going to face. And I think the attack could get anything in any of those games. Just always remember to adjust your expectations for the value that you're getting. You know, these players like Gibbs White probably isn't going to give you the same returns as a Sterling or a Bowen or a Saka or that kind of 7 to 8 million range. So adjust what you're expecting from them because they are mid to lower mid-table for those key stats. But I just think over a busy rotation period, they can offer some genuine good value for money. I really like Wood as a third cheap striker. So you guys know I have João Pedro and I have Archer, because I like to go like 4-5-1 or 3-5-2 and play a cheap striker. I think 0.4 million Wood is worth that over Archer, especially over the next 4 to 5 game weeks. Gibbs White is on pens and he's probably their talisman. He's like their key star player. He's 5.7 million. So again, if you need that cheap option, I think he's there. And I think Alanga is your more explosive option. The one who's going to get you 2 points, 1 point, 2 points, 15. That's the kind of player that he is. He's more your more explosive type player that could get the bigger hauls. Gibbs White will be the one who'll probably tick along the best. He'll get you 4, 5s, and 6s quite often, but I just feel that Alanga's the explosive one. So that's how I feel about Nottingham Forest attack. If I did have to do that, if I was scrambling for money, I don't, because like I said, 2 of my 3 strikers are 5.3 million and under. But there could be people out there that need not just Gordon or Palmer, they need 2 or 3 of them, and they might be looking elsewhere. So, Ryan, what's your thought on the Forest assets?
So I agree with the Gibbs White call. He is on pens as well. Talisman. I think he's got 13. Let me see. In the last 6 game weeks, Gibbs White has had 14 chances created. Only Szoboszlai and Ward-Prowse have had more than him. So he's up there creating chances. Then they've played a lot of tough teams as well in those last 6 game weeks. And with good fixtures upcoming, I think he'll be pretty good if anyone's looking for like that price range type player. I've already mentioned Toffolo in defense. He's had 10 chances created in the last 6 game weeks, which is only beaten by Trippier and Luka Dean. So their wingers and fullbacks are creating quite a lot. And Gibbs White also being in that number 10 type position ends up on the end of most of it. I wouldn't go for Chris Wood because Divock Origi is also there, and that could be a problem. So I wouldn't go there. But Elanga, Gibbs White, Toffolo, I like them as options from Forest.
Yeah, just even though they lose, Gibbs White gets points. I just, personally, the defense. I know the stats are good for the attack, but they're just unreliable. They're an attacking side though. Tien, Nottingham Forest assets, thoughts? Any taking your attention?
I think I agree with you that there's good value in some of their assets like Giswai or Elanga. The problem is midfield. Our midfield, it's just full of the options in my opinion. So at their price point, right? They face or they compete with like Gordon, Palmer, which I think I prefer more. So Yeah, I think obviously, if he won like a differential, then of course he could go for Gibbs White or Elanga instead. But I just think that Gordon and Palmer have proven a little bit more for similar prices. So as as a seventh attacker spot, I think they face very fierce competition there. Chris Wood, in my opinion, can be a good attacker, as you said, as an alternative to Archer. So first bench and maybe you play every now and then. It's fine, but if you find yourself that you have to buy Wood and play him regularly as a seventh attacker, then I'll be quite worried. So yeah, personally, I'm not looking at any of them.
You wait now. Chris Wood's going to score 2 in the next 3.
Of course he will.
Hey, I'm just saying. I was the one who called Lascelles scoring last week. Just going to point that out there. Which he did exactly that.
Can I argue
So
with that?
telling you. And Trippier almost got an assist, but Joe Linton missed a diving header from about 4 yards. So I was almost on the money. Lucian, how are you feeling about Forest assets?
If anyone has watched Nottingham Forest over the last 4 to 5 games, they will be absolutely shocked at how inconsistent they are. You cannot tell whether they play 3-5-2, 4-5-1, 4-4-2, 4 Diamond 2. That it does not matter. Because if there's one thing that's constant about Nottingham Forest, it's change. They've fielded Ola Aina at left back, right back, sometimes centre mid, and they've shifted their central midfield between Yates, Dominguez. I think Mangala is the only constant there. Even Neko Williams has popped up on the right wing on a couple of occasions. So I do feel that the star quality would be like their spine, right? Vladikomos, Morillo, and Mangala. These 3 are like the only constants in this entire side. Morgan Gibbs White is a flexible piece. I would say that he's their talisman, but he's not the creator of all things Forest do. It's not like in yesteryear where you had a reliable system of Awani being at the far post and Brennan Johnson streaking down the right side. This is not your typical stable Nottingham Forest that only rely on 3 attackers anymore. The new Nottingham Forest is now, well, Awoni is supposedly at the far post, but now, as Ryan rightly pointed out, it could be Divock Origi, it could be Chris Wood, it could be both, it could be, and what we do know, however, is that Ilanga has also become a recent constant, no matter what formation they play. Ilanga is supposed to play on the left-hand side. But in one of their most recent formations against Liverpool, they went with a super defensive 5-4-1, which had Ilanga as the lone striker. So it really depends on how flexible Ilanga is going to be. Now, for Forest against Brighton, they had to go offensive because Brighton took a 3-1 lead. And that incentive came via Lewis Dung's controversial red card. This was the irony in all of this is that instead of pushing Gibbs White further forward, they pushed him deeper and they brought on more threats from the flanks. They, for the first time in a very long while, fielded Ilanga and Callum Hudson-Odoi, 2 legit wingers. And this I foresee as Forest's plan A moving forward. They tried to play Chris Wood. They tried to play Ilanga as a lone forward in place of the injured Taiwo Awani. And moving forward, really, it just feels like they're going to go purely on flank matchup. It's not a case of the right crossing for the left because Serge Aurier doesn't reliably play on the right side anymore. But Toffolo, his crossing is okay if Awoni were in the box. But now there is this quiet triangle forming on the left side. Dominguez as left central midfield, Toffolo as left back, so well done Ryan, as well as Ilanga on the left hand side. That left-sided triangle is going to be creating majority of Forest's chances in the coming weeks, starting with Everton, because Everton, try as they might, do not have a legit right back. They don't. No matter if they play Young or Pedersen, they will continue to exhibit massive weaknesses down that right side, as the likes of Paqueta and so on have exposed. So Ilanga against Young, That is something we will all look forward to. But really, the reason I preach Ilanga over Wood, over Gibbs White, over whoever that you want from Nottingham Forest is simply because after Everton, you play Wolves, Spurs, and even Bournemouth. Like, honestly, if I did not have the incentive to pick Darwin Núñez, which was the second best pick after Haaland, I would have gone for Ilanga as my wildcard pick. Because Wolves, Spurs, especially, everyone's seen that space behind Pedro Porro, and Bournemouth all exhibit extreme weakness on the right flank. So I really look forward to Ilanga doing well. And I just am really sad that when I saw Julian Alvarez, I could not go as low as Ilanga. I had to go all the way down to Semenyo because 4.5 was the budget I had.
And Alanga's a midfielder as well, like Tien said. There's a lot of competition for those midfield spots. So yeah, the formation that Forest have is just vibes. That's what they are. 4-4 vibes. That's what they are. I think the only thing I disagree with you there, Lucian, is you said that Dunk's red card was controversial. I don't think it was. He gave dissent. He didn't shut his mouth. He touched the referee, and he gave more dissent, so he gets a second red card, a second yellow. Get off the pitch. No space for that in the game. Going on then to the matchup itself. On the screen, I take these shots from Fantasy Football Scout with their predicted lineup. It's usually Neil who does the job at Scout there, and I think he usually does a very good job with his predicted lineups and team news. It's one of the very few things I think I really watch on the weekly is the team news conferences and updates videos that they do that Neil usually runs with Joe. So we go back to Lucian as our matchups man. Lucian, I think we're going to not copy each other in a bad way. I mean, we're going to echo what each other are saying because I think there's some key obvious matchups that we've all sort of typed up in here. So Lucian, you want to take us away with your thoughts on the game itself?
Oh, well, Forest and Everton right now don't exhibit real weakness other than Ashley Young on the right side. And truth to be told, not many teams have taken advantage of it simply because offensively, both teams are actually starting to show some cohesion. I've already talked about Forest, so I won't go into them much further. But Everton is way more interesting, way more interesting because a defender has finally decided to attack. Mykolenko has popped up. I think like he's literally top of the form board right now, right? And everyone thinks he's gonna fade away. But that relationship he has with McNeil on that left side, combined with the fact that Dokore also drifts to the left side nowadays, while DCL holds the number 9, is something that will surprise. It really will surprise. The only issue here is that, as you guys have all rightly pointed out, competition is fierce, especially for that midfield slot. So I would not dare recommend McNeil or Harrison or even Dokore. It's just really, really difficult, right? So I just feel that it comes down to who dominates the ball. I had this conversation with Gabe yesterday as well, and you always ask yourself, will Forest's plan A or Everton's plan A come to the fore? And what I suspect will happen is the tale of two halves. Forest, playing at home, will have their plan A come to the fore. It will work. They will have Ilanga be the center of everything, torturing Ashley Young. And Forest's game management is where they are most suspect. They cannot keep a lead. So, I mean, bar that Villa win. So this is where Everton will come back. If Sean Dyche is good at something, he makes really clever in-game changes to come back into the game. And this is where I foresee Everton actually roaring back in the second half. And that's when that left side will shine. So I don't know what the score will be, but I do know for sure that Forest will absolutely smash the first half and Everton will react.
Good, fair points. You were right. Mykolenko was he is up there in the form charts, but he's second most informed defender in FPL. Who's the first? It's quiz time.
Better not be Trent.
Nope.
First informed.
I almost gave you guys a clue because I already said Mykolenko was number 1, but he was replaced at the end of the game week. Think of one of the best goals you've seen so far this season.
Oh, Diogo Dalot. Right.
Diego Dalot is the
Yeah.
correct answer. I can't remember how long it was ago when I talked about the value in the Everton defence and being all 4.4 million and below, but Mikolenko's run. So going from game week 13, 12, 11, and so on. 1, 9, 11, 8, 2, 6. And Dalot's has been obviously even better because he's top, but I think it's great. So going on to the points I said in matchup, we already said it. Alanga, I've spoken about him being a potential budget option for the Christmas period, and he's got Young. Surely he's going to get space behind Young. Like, how is he going to catch him? And similar to what Lucian said, like, I don't know why they're not targeting him more, because he's great, but if they're not all the way deep, you can easily get behind Young down that side. The key battle for me is going to be Gibbs White against Mikolenko, because Mikolenko, apart from the United game, he's been incredibly solid. I even remember like when I said I had Salah and Liverpool, and Mikolenko had Salah in his... Salah walked away with 2 goals, but Mikolenko had him in his pocket all game. And I think he had a blinder, so I think that's going to be the key. I think what you were saying about the triangles down the left-hand side for Forest, that should do well for them. The key is if they're going to get down the other side, can Gibbs White get the better of Mikolenko, or is Mikolenko going to peg back Gibbs White? Forest are better at home. Everton don't create anywhere near as much chances or like expected goals away as they do at home. We talked about before, like their XG is way up near the top because they've lost so many games they should have won against the likes of Fulham and Sheffield United, Luton, or whoever, right? So in terms of Everton, don't create as much away from home. Forest are better at home. I think it's still going to be quite low scoring because they're not attackively great sides. But I'm going for like a 1-0 or 2-1 win for Forest. I think it's going to go Forest's way at home. But it is going to boil down to, I think, what Gibbs White's going to be able to be allowed to do from Mikolenko. Ryan, your thoughts on the matchup?
I guess we've spoken about Forest and the left-hand side. From Everton's point of view, it would be if Calvert-Lewin can get his shooting boots on, because Forest are weak down the middle, or at least from the chances they've conceded. So that would be Everton's one and only hope. So I guess that's where your whole Gibbs White, Mikolenko, can Mikolenko get past Gibbs White and then put in a ball for Calvert-Lewin is the question. So that's basically what I would say from that matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might have been Tien who laughed at me before I said I was considering bringing DCL in, but he's got the quality. He's so good if he can stay fit, and if the balls can come in, why not? It's just the fixtures aren't there for Everton, but once they are, I think more people will be jumping. On the second wild card, I think Everton will become a more popular team to invest in. Tien, any thoughts on the matchup?
I don't think I have too much to add. In terms of the score, I think it will be a draw. 1-1.
Low scoring,
scoring.
right? Yeah. It feels that way. But it also does feel like the ones who do score will be the ones of relevance, like an Alanga or a Gibbs White or Mikolenko being involved. It kind of feels like the ones that people have could be. I don't see it being like a Dominguez pass to a volley finish for Forest's goal and Young laying off Garner for Everton's goal. Like, I kind of feel like it's going to be the quote important FPL players that return something. So let's go back to our love of the week, Liverpool. Looking at the question here, then we have already talked about player picks, but again, talked about earlier. Christmas period is busy for Liverpool. Like everyone else, but they usually are stronger in the Premier League, rotate in Europe. And they're maybe the best team in terms of, like, not just in FPL anyway, but the fact that they're likely to have more nailed players over the Christmas period for a good team. So we talked earlier about Nottingham Forest. Yeah, Gibbs White is probably going to play almost every game, right? But Liverpool could be the best team that do something like that. I think Salah's going to get a lot of minutes, for example, over the Christmas period, because they're going to rest him in Europe. So good fixtures. Are there any other players that we are looking at or advising to bring in for Liverpool? could also have an idea for Fulham because their fixtures go red, green, green, red, green, green. But we talked about competition for places. I don't think there's a lot going on for Fulham. There may be a defender, but I don't rate the defense. But looking at Liverpool, it's my game week player pick that I've already mentioned is Diaz because Jota's out indefinitely. I feel his minutes are more solid than Nunes. I know Nunes has started recently, but there's always that Gakpo question in the background. Keller is a Christmas gift for 3.9 million. We talked about him. Again, if he's out for 4 weeks, that doesn't sound like a long time, but that's between 4 to 6 FPL game weeks, which is a chunk of time to bring in for a 3.9 million goalkeeper. Tien, when you talked about Trent and all those defensive stats, I will just put on the screen now. I think this is the one that Lucian sent into our chat about the 2022-23 season when Keller was in for Alisson. I do see that, of course, Alisson is a world-class goalkeeper, and it will, to an extent, affect the ability for clean sheets. But I don't think it's going to negate it so much that a 3.9 million starting player. I've got Simicast, right? I could have a double Liverpool defense for what, less than 8 million or less than 9 million or whatever. I got Simicast for 4.4 and it would be 3.9 for Keller. So you can still jump. I'm even going to throw Simicast in there because he's 4.7. Robertson's still going to be out till what, the early next year, early 2024. So you're still probably going to get 8 out of 10, 80% games out of Simicast as well. So I think there's some good shopping to be done. The only one that I'm not leaning towards, I said Darwin Nunes has an issue with some Gakpo minutes being taken. I said the one that I wouldn't offer is Trent, which is Tien's pick for this game week for the next 4. But if you were like me and you were sort of having one proper striker and one nothing striker, like a Pedro or Archer, like I've got, if you were going to go 4-5-1, Trent would be worth it because you're matching up a 7.9 million Trent against an 8 million and under striker. And we've talked about how uninspiring strikers are in FPL. We've basically had Haaland and Watkins and for little bits of time Alvarez. They've been the only constants this season. So sack off the striker, just get 2 4.5 million forwards and go 4-5-1. So don't have anyone under Watkins and just go 4-5-1 and have Trent as the second striker. And instead of a 3-5-2, go 4-5-1. Then I think you might get some value out of Trent. But I think Diaz is my number 1. Keller is my number 2. If Alisson is out for 4 games or more, if Alisson only misses like 2 games, I don't think he's worth it. And Simicast is still in there as well. But if you're gonna switch formations, I think 4-5-1 and have Trent is a good shot as well. I think pretty much any key player from Liverpool, from the defense or the attack, the midfield is. I'm not going to suggest Soberslai. I'm not going to suggest McAllister, right? Anyone from the defense and attack is pretty much viable. But the value you could get, like you can sit there with Keller and Simicast and have double Liverpool defense. I think is great value. Anyone on your Christmas shopping list, Ryan, from Liverpool?
So I've got Simicast and Salah. I guess I've got a goalkeeper pairing of Areola and Turner as well. And Turner is like a dead spot. So if anyone's wanting to move to Kelleher, that could be like an option.
Same as me.
The only thing at the moment is just need to see how long actually Alisson is out for as a one thing. And also like we've shown the stats. The reason like I think Liverpool were good this season in terms of keeping clean sheets because Alisson was making like key saves. That was the one main factor. So we'll have to wait and see whether that actually carries over, like those stats carry over this season as well. But the other thing is, if I get Kelleher, then I price myself out of like the ability to go for a Darwin Nunes if needed, or even a probably not Diaz because there are plenty of options. But the forward line, there aren't that many options like that you would want to pick. And that's probably why I might not go Kelleher, just in case like something happens to Watkins. I need to go and pick another forward. And Darwin Nunes is probably the next best option. So I just want to keep like that spot open just in case.
Yeah, it's potentially 3 Premier League games, which is a horrible sticking point. Like I think you need 4 to make Keller worth it. But again, if you've got nothing to do and Turner's a dead spot and you're not going to triple Liverpool, you're going to have Fulham, Sheffield United, and Crystal Palace, who, from a defender's point of view, are pretty good to go against. You have some Fulham options.
Yes, only Leno. That's it.
Just Leno.
And that is as a probably a rotation pairing if you wanted to.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Lucian, any Liverpool people on your shopping list? Do you have Salah still, right?
Of course.
Yeah, you had him like all season. I think we've
Yeah.
all jumped on and off him, or I was the one who started with that. But yeah, anyone else other than Salah?
Well, 3/4 of the conversation surrounding Liverpool are already settled. So I think the idea of picking. Okay, wait. Let me get Fulham out of the way first. So Fulham are morphing, and they reacted to that Palinia absentee. Well, I think the question comes down to whether you want to see Fulham as a massively green fixture or is it going to be zonal dependent? Because right now with Fulham, I'd still argue that the flanks are where things really break down because it's all about space management. Fulham just have this thing about managing the space of the width of their pitch, where their centre back Kelvin Bessie gets massively pulled out of position, especially when he's forced to move to the flanks. So sometimes they force errors out of him and they force him into a really bad pass, and that's where they get big chances. Sometimes it's just sending long balls down the flanks, and Fulham's wingers just don't cope because their actual wingers, the likes of Willian and whoever, they're all the way up the pitch, so they are really reliant on Palinia for cover, and Reed just doesn't do the same job on the right side. So, in terms of matchups, or at least in terms of recommending a Liverpool player, right? Salah is a no-brainer because he will almost certainly get behind Castan and whoever that's on the flank. The question comes down to who takes advantage of the left. Because right now there are 2 contenders, right? Luis Diaz and supposedly Cody Gakpo. So I'd like to say that Cody Gakpo might be a threat to Darwin Nunes, but in recent games, Gakpo has actually been playing central midfield. He's actually been doing a lot better of a job down the left side, and he makes that central midfield to the flanks runs that actually created the space for Trent Alexander-Arnold to get his equalizer against City. So I'd say that there is a universe where Cody Gakpo and Darwin Nunes can play in the same side. I think in this particular case, if I were to recommend a Liverpool player, it comes down to whether you'd get him for the short term for the next 3 games, or whether you'd pick a Liverpool player for the medium term where you hold him for the FPL Hall 8-game philosophy, right? I'm looking at Luis Diaz more for the short term because I think what people underrate Luis Diaz is his header. I think there's this thing about Salah being a creator that crosses for Luis Diaz, and his standing jump against some of his upcoming opposition is going to be a huge, huge factor. Like I would not be surprised to see a Luis Diaz headed goal from a Salah cross. Absolutely certain of that. The question comes down to whether you can outscore him by having a right-sided midfielder such as Trent, or you'd go for somebody more incisive such as Szoboszlai. This is where we disagree because I do feel that right now Liverpool are a side where the right side creates for the left. So it's just a matter of whether that Trent, Szoboszlai, Salah triangle on the right side creates for themselves, or whether they just continue to have Luis Diaz as their benefactor. I do feel though that in the long run, right, in the long run, especially when we talk about FPL meta, if you pick a Liverpool player in general as one of your 7 consistent attackers, who are their rivals? Because right now, right? If you sort FPL by transfers in, and you just filter out the 7 million bracket, there are 3 players who are in and around the 100k transfers in just this week alone. They are Mbomo, just under 7, Sterling, and Doku, 6.7 million. And I mean, you are picking a Liverpool player to run against those 3. I do feel that in the coming weeks, right, besides Mohamed Salah and Bukayo Saka, everyone's going to be owning an enabler as well as 2 of these players. Doku, Mbeumo, Sterling, Diaz, Soboslai, and Trent. Your 3 Liverpool differentials are against these 3 popular players in the coming weeks. So, yeah, take your pick, cross your fingers, and I just feel that you have to get Mbomo. Sterling's like his time will come later on, but right now I have a bigger penchant for Diaz in the short term and Soboslai in the medium term.
Yeah, it's Tango Bowen to Saka, who's 53.6% owned and is about to face Wolves and Luton. But I think Diaz is the way I'm going to go. Tien, thoughts on Liverpool?
Yeah, so I think we've already mentioned about Darwin a few times, and there's no doubt that he's a very good option for at least for the next 3 or 4 game weeks. But for me, if you don't already own Darwin, right, and I think most people own Salah already, so we don't have to talk about him. To get a Darwin, most people will have to sell Watkins. And I think to sell Watkins, you got to think about fact that you might want to get him back for 17 or 18, especially 18 when he plays Sheffield United. Right, it's a very strong captaincy shout as well. So then the question is that worth it for maybe 3 game weeks of Darwin, and then another free transfer to get Watkins back? So I think that's something that you got to think about. Whether there's enough upside for that move, because essentially you're gonna go Watkins out and then Watkins in. For me personally, I don't think I'll be selling Watkins, because the 2 tougher games, as we call it, are both at home, and we know that Villa is a team that do much better attacking wise, at least at home. So maybe it's not that red of a fixture against Man City and Arsenal. I think some people can make a move from Alvarez to Darwin, which I think is makes a lot more sense. Or some people can make it work with the 3 big hitters up front. That can work as well. Diaz is certainly something that could be quite interesting. I think I do have in exact fund if I sell Bowen, and if he's confirmed out, I think Diaz is a very good shout as well. But that also means that I'm priced out of some other potential moves that I have in mind. So that's something that I have to think about. Once again, it's those sort of addressing your problems in the team, and going short term, or trying to play the long game and sort of focus on the long game as well. And finally on Calo, I think it's another short term pick that it's like kind of a gift. I think in a way, if Alisson is out for 3 or 4 game weeks, as you said, and it could be a great move if you have nothing else to sort out in your team. Personally, if I had to make a goalkeeper move, I would rather upgrade like Areola to like a Raya or someone rather than buying Calo for a very short term. So it's really looking like I'm just going with Salah and no one else, even if Liverpool have really good fixtures in the next 3 game weeks, just because a lot of those players just look like short-term moves for me. which doesn't really fit into my play style.
Yeah, Diaz feels like the spicy move. Saka feels like the simple move, and someone like Palmer or Gordon feels like a smart move because that's the money that you can really upgrade, like a striker. That's how I'm feeling at the minute between the three that I've got. So specific matchup. Oh, going ahead,
One
right?
quick thing. I know people still have like a wild card left. Some people. Then Kelleher is
crazy.
actually a yes. That's a good move to do because you can wild card him out in game week like 19. That I would do
I
if
think
people
you'd
had.
just be dead spotting that. I'd transfer Keller in, and I wouldn't move him till our wild card.
Yeah.
I'd just
You could do that as well. Yeah.
because
But-
Turner's a dead spot basically, so you'd just be waiting for your second wild card, I think. But yeah.
Yeah. The only risk in that is if you ever want Darwin Nunes or another Liverpool attacker, you're locked. That's the one.
Who's still got their wild card? Show yourselves.
We have a panel team that has a wild card still. And I know a couple others who
Outrageous.
have a wild cards as well.
What's their rank?
They're doing pretty decently. There's like one guy in like the top 20k who still has his wild card.
Wow.
Oh my
In
God.
one of my middle leagues.
He
Yeah,
must
like
have
in like the football champions.
absolutely. He must have nailed his start of season squad. He was there with like Alvarez, just like I knew this was going to happen, guys. This was easy. Watkins was always going to be great this season to go with Haaland. Clearly. All right. So the actual matchups then of Liverpool at home to Fulham. So Lucian, we'll start with you. Feels like it's going to be one-sided here. But how are you feeling about matchup-wise, Lucian?
I mean, what more do you want to know, right? For me, it's just about how soon do Fulham commit the error. Because I do feel that Fulham are going to concede penalties. The penalty conceded against Wolves was pretty legitimate. So I'm just looking at Mohamed Salah just profiting off errors like in terms of a penalty. But beyond that, I think zonally it's difficult to predict because I just don't know where Iwobi will play. That's my biggest question. Where will Iwobi play is going to determine how Fulham attack, how Fulham defend, and how Fulham do everything else, really. Yeah, that's all I can add because there's just so much uncertainty about Fulham that I don't want to talk too much about them besides what Fulham do badly rather than what Fulham do well.
I think for the points I've got here, it's heavily leaning towards Liverpool. I think Robertson versus Salah is obviously key. Robertson's pace, I think, can hinder Salah because a lot of the time Salah can get in behind, and that's how he can break away and score a lot of his goals. I think Robertson makes a lot of mistakes. So when you're saying about making mistakes, that's one of them. I've said before about a Bolton fan, I've seen a lot of Tim Ream in my history. He's not fine wine. He's not getting better with age. And Robertson now has still got that pace. So I think that is one of the things that can stop Salah a little bit. But even if they're face to face and Salah's got the ball at his feet, he could just walk past him because he's not great defensively. But I don't think Salah's going to be easy. It's not going to be as easy for him to get in behind Robertson as it is against other teams because Robertson clocks, we're used to. I don't know if he's for some reason lost some pace, but he is one of the faster defenders going. So that could be one positive for Fulham. Clean sheet is high potential for Liverpool here, despite the loss of Alisson. I think it's the highest potential clean sheet. It's 40-something%, I think, for Liverpool this game week, which is incredibly high. So that does make Keller an even more inviting option, especially for the people who've got nothing to do. But you can argue that without Alisson, that clean sheet potential lowers. The joy for Liverpool should come down the right-hand side with Trent and Salah against Willian and Robinson. And Reed, you said earlier about, I always say the way to beat Fulham is to stay away from Palhinha. If you stay away from him, because he's so good, you'll get joy. And Reed is usually the left-sided player. So you've got Trent and Salah coming up against like Willian, who isn't known for tracking back a lot. Reed is the one that I'll have to push out to the side, and Robertson against Salah. So I think that's where Basically, that they can get a lot of the joy there. And if Trent steps forward from the right back slot into the sort of right centre mid / central defensive mid slot with that role he sometimes plays and comes up against Reed, I think that's where they're going to get it. But yeah, it's just going to be a red wave washing over a terrible Fulham defence. Leno probably will concede 2 or 3 goals and get a couple of save points as well, because that's what Leno does. He'll probably outscore Areola this week again, just by virtue of saving 10 of the 50 shots he's about to face this weekend. Makes captaincy really difficult, I think. Ryan, any points on the specific matchup here?
Well, according to the chances conceded, Fulham are weak down the middle. This is where the whole can Darwin Núñez finish whatever Salah, Trent, or Szoboszlai are going to create for him. I don't think it'll be a battering per se in terms of scoreline. Probably a 2-0 to Liverpool or maybe 3-1 at best. I don't see a huge, massive goal. Because they defensively, Fulham have slightly improved over the last couple of game weeks in terms of the numbers, at least. That's it.
Yep. Tien, any points?
No, not much to add. I think I'm just backing Liverpool attack, because at home their attack is very, very strong. A lot stronger than away. I think if you're looking back, score on average 2.8 goals at home. So I think it's going to be a 3-0.
Yep,
Liverpool.
that's where I'm leaning. I think it is going to be a battering. I cannot see Fulham holding these guys out. Like, I love Raul Jimenez. I was really, even though he took away, I think it was the Matty Cash clean sheet, I was happy it was Raul Jimenez. Real shame what happened to him with his head injury, but he's not a goal scorer. Like, you've got Pereira. That's Willian can do stuff. I wouldn't say Iwobi's a particular threat. So defensively, the potential's there, but like a backline of Castagna, Bassey, Ream, and Robinson is just not going to hold out Darwin Núñez, Mohamed Salah, and probably Luis Diaz, in my opinion. Which brings us on to a difficult captaincy conversation. Because again, we have another tight affair between the Norwegian Nightmare and the Egyptian King. Like a lot of people, I was set on Salah at home to Fulham. Fulham are a bottom 5 side for key defensive stats like attempts on target conceded and big chances conceded, things like that, right? As well as Salah's incredible home form, where he's averaging 10.5 points per game at Anfield. However, Man City, now, every time Haaland, all right, yeah, he's always an option, but City at home against a potential Royal Davis centre-half partnership is, and Big Ange does not budge. He will live and die on the high line. He will live and die on his full press, full throttle, all-out attack, gung-ho style. He's not going to go to Man City and suddenly deploy a 5 at the back low block. He's not. And even if he did, he's not got the materials for that. He's not got it in him because he's not got the players there. There's no Romero, there's no Van der Ven. He can go and set up a 5 back low block. He's still not going to stop Haaland and City in this. I've said when I posted a lot about Haaland getting fed up at Doku's probably going to be the best choice for this game because he's greedy. If you own FPL Doku, you're having a lovely time, but that's a negative for City in this. But I just see it as a goal-a-thon. Like, Big Angie's going to go there and he's going to try and win 5-4. Now, for the superstitious people, they're going to say that Spurs is the bogey team for Man City. You know, ever since they came back in the Champions League and they get good results there. But I don't think that's going to have effect on this Premier League game. And if you're looking and it's going to be Royal and Davis high line against Haaland, the only negative for me is Doku not passing the ball enough times to Haaland to score 3 goals instead of 5. It's incredibly difficult. There are other great fixtures with Saka at home to Wolves and Mbeumo home to Luton, but EO comes into it again, unfortunately. It's that horrible elephant in the room where this is a game week where Salah and Haaland can get a lot of points. And if it was another game week, I would be sat here saying Saka and Mbeumo are fantastic options to captain this game week. But the fact that Haaland faces that horrible high line with like the second and third string defensive Spurs, and Salah's at home to Fulham, who are bottom 5 for key stats and easily destroyable, I don't think this is the week to go spicy. And I think if whoever you just make peace with yourself, because there's no wrong outcome. There's no wrong decision. I think between choosing between these two players again. I think it's incredibly tight. The stats have it a lot more, and the predictors have it a lot more. I think for Salah, like the AI and points prediction computer algorithms or whatever, they have it like 0.1 ahead for Haaland. I think they're both fantastic. I still have not concluded where I'm going to go here. If Doku's going to start, I'm leaning more towards Salah, because I just believe in Spurs more as a top side. But if they had Romero or Van de Ven back, just one of them, I'd be straight on Salah. But just Haaland against that defense, with that effective ownership, is going to be real tough. Ryan, is it just these two for you think?
Yeah, it's probably these two as the main candidate options, unless someone wants to go extremely left field and go and captain Mbeumo. That's also a possibility. But no, it's only these two. I'm going Haaland for the same reason I said last week, where I want to like steady the ship, and also my rank, he's just going to be the most popular captain, regardless of how popular Salah will be in the higher ranks. So I will still gain points from Salah, regardless of what his EO is, because he's just not going to out EO Haaland, unfortunately, because the managers in my ranks are all they've got Haaland captaincy. So I'm going that, and also I feel like this week the Spurs team that's about to play City is probably even more weaker than what they did against Villa, because now they don't have Bentancur as well, and that's another loss in midfield. Added to that, John Stones is back. He was on the bench for City in the Champions League tie, so he could potentially feature in the Spurs game. That kind of helps Haaland as well in terms of chance creation. Doku, Grealish, hard to say, because Grealish had about 54 minutes and then Doku came on. So I don't know who exactly is going to start for this upcoming game. It's a bit hard to tell, because they do have the midweek fixture as well. So we'll see. But Haaland for now, because I think there are goals in this game.
You think it's mad that they started Emerson and Royale and Ben Davies as centre backs, and Eric Dyer sat on the bench, like an actual centre back, and he still wouldn't play him over those two. And you're right, the Bentancur looks like he's going to be out this week as well, which further just saps everything out. It's so difficult. Tien, where are you going?
So currently I'm on Salah. I think the fixture is just too good. And the fact that Liverpool attacking form is much stronger at home, and Salah's underlying stats is much better at home as well compared to away. And the other thing is, I think Salah is less prone to any sort of formation or tactic changes. Like no matter what formation or tactics, I mean, Liverpool don't change it very often anyway. It's gonna be Salah and Darwin link up and try and supporting behind him. And for the fact that we just talk about the matchup, I'm expecting 3-0 or even 4-0, as Mira said in the chat. Whereas for Spurs, of course, you can say they playing high line, and the squad is thin and they don't have players and all that, but a lot of that is narrative, right? So whereas the underlying stats actually back Liverpool and Salah. So that therefore it's firmly on Salah for me. But having said that, I think Haaland is always a very, very good option. Now, an interesting observation though, or fact, is on the stats, is that both Man City and Haaland, the underlying stats are worse at home compared to away. which is opposite of what we normally would expect, right? Normally, Haaland at home is just like a no-brainer. And I think finally, like, do I sit here and expect Liverpool to smash Fulham, as compared to Man City sort of battering Spurs? I think I'm leaning towards the former, that Liverpool has a better chance of really going away with a big score against Fulham, and Man City having a big score against Spurs. But yeah, extremely close. And finally, I agree with Ryan there. And Burmo is an outside shout. Playing Luton at home is always a good captaincy shout.
3 of Haaland's 10+ point hauls have come away from home. 3 out of 4. But his biggest haul has been at home against Fulham with 20 points. But there was no Paulinho in that game.
One thing I'll add, Spurs in the last 6 game weeks are bottom 4 defensive team. XGC, non-pen, big chances created, bottom 4.
But where's Fulham?
At
Fulham are bottom
above
5.
Yeah,
Fifth,
no,
probably.
Fulham are mid-table. They're mid-table in the last 6 game weeks. Spurs are bottom 4.
Genuinely what's coming into my equation is the potential clean sheet point, because for captain, that'll give me another point. It'll give me another
extra
points.
Point per goal.
2 points.
Extra point per goal. Yeah, extra point per goal as well.
And 2
And
points.
assists. Like Salah has very high assist potential these days with Darwin. Haaland doesn't really assist anyone. He just scores, right? So yeah.
If Salah and Haaland somehow both blank, but Liverpool get a clean sheet, Salah gets 2 more points if he's your captain. Like, literally, the chance of 2 additional points for Salah is putting it on there because the clean potential is so high. Finally, Lucian, your thoughts then? Where are you thinking captaincy?
Floor versus ceiling. I think Salah just has the higher floor. Haaland can easily get double-digit hauls whenever he wants. I just think that Salah is guaranteed 6 points. Yeah, because the last time Liverpool in general had a plum fixture, my only concern was that they, like, in terms of rotation, they benched Tsimikas and Gravenberch for Joe Gomez at left back against Luton. So that would be my only concern, really, that Liverpool decide to use this fixture, considering that they play midweek right soon. And yeah, just randomly bring in a second string somebody, and then but that is pure speculation, and I just feel that Liverpool will win the penalty and Salah will take it and score. I really just, on that logic, my captain is on Salah for bird in hand, better than 2 in the bush.
Yeah, I think so. That is that 3 out of 4 of us on Captain Salah, right? And 1 on Haaland at the minute. I mean, it could change. I think Ryan has been the worst with captaincy so far this season, so I'm going to stick with Salah.
I'll come back next week with a double-digit haul from Haaland.
And I think we'll also come back with a double-digit haul from Salah, so I think it's going to be a moot point. I think Lucy, you already said that they're both going to get 16 points. Probably. It's just one of those horrible ones where the choice is right, and if you're on the case where your guy blanks and the other guy's just gone and got 2 goals, it's tough not to be all what if, right? It was literally a coin flip between Salah and Haaland, and it's cost me 10 points, it's cost me 20 points because of that, right? Just happens. Just like I said at the start of my piece, make peace with yourself, right? They are good choices.
You can't argue. Yeah, you can't argue that it's a wrong choice to go for Salah or it's a wrong choice to go for Haaland.
Because we're not going to sit here next week and, like, let's say Haaland goes crazy and Salah doesn't. Ryan's not going to come in and be like, "You 3 idiots, you chose Salah at home to Fulham. What a ridiculous choice that was."
I'll be like, I captained a team playing bottom 4 defense.
Yeah, that's
it.
It is. It's tough just accept the decision you make. But I mean, I don't have sympathy if people are sat there, I don't know, captaining Trippier or something like that. You know, like, if you're not captaining these two players and it doesn't work out for you, if it works out for you, I applaud you. You're a braver FPL manager than I have. But I don't feel like that's the most effective way to play it, because these two aren't just like the best two FPL assets, period. They're also probably the best captaincy choices as well as being fantastic. Like, I know Buemo at home to Luton is very tasty, and you can be happy with his points anyway, but even if you put him into the mix, I still think Fulham at home for Salah and Spurs at home with that injury-riddled defence for Spurs, and midfield and forward injury-riddled issue for Spurs right now. It's so tough. If I gave power to my wife to choose the captain, I said, choose one of these two. I'm not bothered. Choose one. And she chose. I'd be satisfied with the choice, because they're literally both the best. I don't know any other way to put it. So yeah. Any final points before we end the stream, guys?
Time starts now. Let's go.
Now.
Mm.
So yeah, be planning. The Christmas crunch is upon us. Think out your schedules for the next sort of 6 game weeks, because game weeks are going to come thick and fast, especially for us four here when we're in time zones where we're going to be getting deadlines at like 3 a.m. or some ridiculous times. You don't want to be sat there 12 o'clock like, oh my god, it's a deadline tonight and I've not thought who to bring in, or just have a sit down, even with a pen and paper, have a look at the Lego Mane chart, see who's playing and when, and you'll be fine. All right, thanks for joining
Look
us,
at the
guys.
deadline.
Look, don't forget the deadline times where you are as well. Anyway, thanks for joining us, guys. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. We should be back next game week as per usual. And as always, have a good one. Bye, guys. Take care.